Alright, so ever since the 2022 NBA trade deadline, I have been extremely fascinated with one team in the NBA who I actually think might have had the most underrated deadline out of any single team. Now, this team was really trash talked a lot for a couple of the moves that they, of course, did make. And honestly, I actually think what they did was extremely underrated. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that trading away, a couple of the plays that the Trailblazers ended up actually doing, like, Norman Powell, wasn't exactly the greatest thing because they didn't get exactly too much. But for the Trailblazers and Damian Lillard, I'm actually in love with what, the Trailblazers were able to get out of Damian Lillard. I legitimately thought it was really, really underrated. For example, what the Portland Trailblazers were actually able to get is the 2022, New Orleans Pelicans pick, which, again, at the time of making this video, could actually land around pick 10. They were able to get rid of CJ McCollum, who I just think they needed to finally move on from. I mean, CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard, the experiment it just wasn't working, and they were able to get a first-round pick back for him. Not just that, they were able to bring in a solid player in Josh Hart and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who I think they ended up flipping Alexander-Walker, which I don't know if I really rate that, but they just did it for the contract. You bring in a solid role player in Josh Hart, who's still on $12 million, who is very tradable, could 100% bring in a couple second-round picks, and maybe even something else, really. And they also got 2 future seconds back in the deal. Then, with the other trade, they were actually able to bring in Justice Winslow and Keon Johnson, who Winslow seems to actually be having a pretty under-the-radar season. I mean, he's actually been alright for the Los Angeles Clippers. I don't think he'll be really anything too special going forward, but again, he did manage to average around 4 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, some pretty solid defense for them. And not just that, they were able to bring in Keon Johnson, who could definitely be a really good young player for the future. But I think what I mainly like about these, because obviously everything I've just said, none of it was really anything too special besides basically pick 10, which they've now received. But the other thing I think they've, kind of brought in that really makes a whole lot of sense is you've actually got now 2 max contracts to pretty much spend in the salary. And what I mean by this is they brought in Eric Bledsoe, who's on $19 million, who they can actually decline. That frees up $19 million right there. Joe Ingles is becoming a free agent. That frees up $13 million. Jusuf Nurkic is becoming a free agent. That frees up $12 million. And basically, if we're keeping tracks here, that's about $43 million spare right there. They ended up, trading Norman Powell. Did a bunch of things there. They've got a bunch of expiring contracts that are like the $3 million ranges where they're already going to be up to like $55 million. And then not just that, they're going to reportedly be trading Josh Hart to a team needing a solid role player like him, which will free up, Josh Hart's contract, meaning they'll probably have around $67 million to spend in free agency. And that's about $33 million per, these 2 players. What I actually really like as well is the fact that now that they've traded all these players away and Dame is still struggling with a little bit of an injury, they're actually now potentially tanking now for a better pick. I mean, they're not getting worse. Like, they managed to make all these trades and they're still somehow staying where they are, meaning that I think their coaching is relatively alright. And again, they will probably finish with the Pelicans' 10th pick or so, and they'll probably have their own pick, which will probably be like 11. And then there's the other thing of Anthony Simons, who is currently developing into one of the league's best players. Anthony Simons, since all these trades have happened, is like averaging 23 plus points per game and has been absolutely insane for the Trailblazers. Not just that, he's finally starting now and he's averaging 17 points per game, 4 assists on 40% from 3. And you might be like, well, can Dame and Simons really work together? I'm not exactly too sure, but you're 100% going to start both of them next season. And if Anthony Simons continues to be the player he will be, and I think develops and learns how to play with Dame, you could be looking at a dude that could average around 18 points per game or so, as, 18 to 20 points per game, as the second option at only 23 years of age. Plus, he is 6'3", so he's not overly too small to be able to guard that shooting guard position. And if they go out and bring in a player like Jeremy Grant, who they're rumored to be interested in, and are currently apparently the favourites to get, then I think they're going to be an extremely solid team. The way I see this Trailblazers rebuild going is, again, really interesting. You will go into this draft now with 2 top 15 picks, right? 2 top 15 picks. You will also go into free agency with 2 max contracts and a Damian Lillard, who I think is actually happy to be at the Trailblazers for the first time in a while. And let me explain what I mean by that. Damian Lillard has basically been going about his business over the last couple of years with tons of reports saying he is frustrated but really wants to win a championship in Portland. I think they've finally done something extremely bold and have actually decided to say, well, we're going to blow it up, but we're going to keep you and Anthony Simons and build a really good team around you guys and just see how we go from there. Not just that, they've actually brought in a couple of these veterans who seem like they could be committed to the team. For example, Joe Ingles and Yusuf Nurkic, who they decided not to trade, could be back next year. And what I'm saying by that is Ingles has a $13 million expiring deal, and again, he's just come off an ACL, meaning that he will probably be a minimum player, but I still think the Trailblazers might be interested in a dude like him. And Nurkic, I just think you have to bring back. There is a legitimate real option, because I believe they've got bird rights on him, that they could bring in like a max player and another dude on a near max and still keep Nurkic, which is really crazy to kind of think about. And again, it's going to be insane, because I think Damian Lillard is really happy now. He really knows the future of this team is in absolute great hands, and I think that it's great that they finally decided to do some moves, and they potentially found a coach that I think they know might be there potentially for the future. Now, what I actually see them doing is, again, they'll have roughly $67 million to spend. Jeremy Grant on the Detroit Pistons is reportedly looking for a near-max deal, and I don't think he'll get it. I think the Pistons will offer him a $20 million per year type deal again, and some teams will offer him that same deal. But I think the Trailblazers will come in and they won't overpay heaps, but I actually think we'll offer him around a $23 million per year deal. Now, this still keeps about, I believe, $44 million to potentially spend. You legitimately now go into this where you say, alright, we've just got Jeremy Grant, a dude that can average you about 16 to 20 points per game, great 3-point shooter, great perimeter defender. You bring him in, then I think you bring back Yusuf Nurkic on around $12 million per year. Then you've got about $32 million to spend, and then I think you potentially look what you do from there. Now, the ultimate truth is, I don't think they're going to be able to bring in a max player. I just don't think the market for Portland is necessarily there. I don't know how it's going to go. Not just that, they've already got a point guard, they've already got a shooting guard, they've now got their power forward in Jeremy Grant, and their center, I think, in Yusuf Nurkic. You're most likely looking for a small forward, and unfortunately for them, there just aren't that many small forwards going into next year. Now, a player that I actually think would be really interesting to bring in is actually TJ Warren. Now, TJ Warren has missed about, I believe, a year and a half due to injuries, which is just, it's really, really sad for him. He just has absolutely battled, but I think he'll be looking for a fresh start, especially considering the Indiana Pacers are blowing it up and are going young as well. I think he'll be looking for a fresh start, and I think legitimately the Trailblazers could get him on a deal worth about $15 million per season. Now, some of you at home might have been like, that's too much for a player that's missed a year and a half. Some of you might have been like, well, for a dude that's averaged 20 points per game, one season and on 40% from 3, that's an absolute steal. I'm actually that type of guy too. I think that the Trailblazers right now, I think he's probably the best small forward available next season, and just not many players to go out and get. I just think you take an absolute gamble and you do exactly that. And look, it may seem really, really foolish to do, but then you kind of go, well, look, we've got Dame and Simons at that point guard and shooting guard position. They're not exactly the greatest defenders out there. We really need to go in and bring in some, defenders. And I think TJ Warren, he will come back, and I can see him definitely coming back and averaging around 13 to 14 points per game on this team and pretty good perimeter defense. Compare that to a dude like Lauri Markkanen, who's also got injury issues, but is on around 18 million per season, doing similar stuff, just worse perimeter defense. You're probably not complaining with bringing TJ Warren in on about 13 to 16 million per season. Then, again, because of that, you've probably got around 16 million or so to realistically spend on the bench. And I believe, again, some people might say, well, will TJ and will Grant want to come to the Trailblazers and will Nurkic want to come back? Nurkic has already said before that he wants to come back to this Trailblazers team. Not just that, Jeremy Grant has been really interested in apparently joining the Trailblazers for a bit now, and really wants to play with Dame. The only one I'm not sure about is Warren. There's no report here. I'm just kind of pulling this out of my ass at the moment, but I still think it'd be a solid kind of move. And then if I was them, I would just fill the bench out with legitimately whoever is available. Realistically, probably some interior defense would be really nice. I'm not too sure how good Nurkic's interior defense is these days. You could realistically go after a dude like Thad Young. You could go after a dude like JaVale McGee, who is still available. Even a dude like Derek Favors, not the best interior dude out there, but I guess he's still kind of roaming around. Thomas Bryant, not the best interior guy out there, but still might do the job. He's kind of out there. And again, there's a bunch of these role players who they can, try and sign. Maybe some veterans to surround around this team. You look at maybe a Tyus Jones or a PJ Tucker, could potentially be there. An Avery Bradley, Dennis Schroeder. There's so many of these players. Jeff Green, they could realistically look at. And I think that would make the team really, really interesting and really good in my opinion. So again, as the title of this video will most likely say, whatever it, ends up being, but I'm sure it might be this. I think the Portland Trailblazers rebuild is actually better than you think, and I think this team could actually be extremely good. And as I'm making this video, it really just makes me want to do a My League rebuild on them, because everything, I've been saying, a lot of it's fantasy. Look, Jeremy Grant and Nurkic will probably join the team. Nurkic will re-sign. I think Grant will probably join them in free agency. But of course, I do think TJ Warren could be a potential, signing, and I think a lot could potentially happen. But of course, if you haven't already, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for the latest NBA content and NBA news. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to my gaming channel, MLIRL/vlogging channel. Check out my podcast as well if you haven't already. I'll be linking all of them in the description down below. But most importantly, subscribe to the channel for the latest NBA content and NBA news, and comment your thoughts and opinions down below. Do you guys think it would be a good idea for the Portland Trailblazers to maybe go after a dude, like Jeremy Grant, this and that? Do you guys think the rebuild is going okay? Definitely let me know your thoughts and opinions on this down below. Of course, do all that. And yeah, as I was saying, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.